The first Vextharan warship tore through the fabric of space like a shard of glass forced through silk. One moment, the void beyond Neptune was empty. The next, it was filled with the angular crystalline horrors of the Dominion's advanced fleet, hundreds of them, their hulls refracting the distant sun's light into jagged spears of violet and gold. They moved with the cold precision of a surgeon's scalpel, slicing into the Sol system without so much as a warning shot. On Earth, the alarms came too late. Admiral Elias Vance was halfway through his third cup of black coffee when the emergency klaxon split the morning calm of Luna Command. The holoscreens flared to life, painting the war room in the sickly glow of incoming catastrophe. Multiple FTL signatures, barked Lieutenant Chen, her fingers flying across the tactical display. Neptune's outer arrays just lit up like a damn supernova. Vance didn't flinch. He'd spent 30 years waiting for this moment, ever since the first whispers of the Dominion's expansion reached human ears. He set his coffee down, slow and deliberate, and watched as the enemy fleet unfolded across the system like a blooming nightmare. "Sound general quarters," he said, "and get me the council." But the Vextharans weren't interested in negotiations. By the time Vance's orders reached Mars, the orbital defense platforms were already burning. The Dominion's opening salvo had been surgical, kinetic rods launched at relativistic speeds, turning the Martian perimeter into a graveyard of shattered metal and frozen bodies. The feeds from Phobos Station showed the last moments, a silent, glittering rain of debris, and then static. Luna fared no better. The alien fleet bypassed Earth entirely, spearing straight for humanity's orbital stronghold. The lunar defense grid managed a single volley before the Vextharans jammed their systems. The moon's surface lit up with the dying embers of railgun fire, then went dark. "Admiral," Chen's voice was tight. "They're hailing us." The main screen flickered. A face, if it could be called that, materialized, chitinous plates, 6 obsidian eyes, a mouth that split vertically into something between a grin and a wound. "People of Sol." The voice was a chorus, layered and dissonant, as if a dozen beings spoke through one throat. "We are the Vextharan Dominion. Your system is now ours. Surrender within 72 of your hours or be erased." Then, the war room erupted. "They just took out Mars and Luna in under an hour," shouted General Okafor, slamming a fist onto the table. "We can't fight that! "We don't have a choice," Vance said, quiet but ironclad. The holoscreen split into a dozen frantic feeds, Earth's leaders, their faces pale, their voices overlapping in panic. The United Planetary Council was already fracturing. Some called for immediate surrender, others for a suicidal counterattack. Vance tuned them out. His eyes locked onto the tactical display, where the Dominion's fleet hung like a guillotine over the system. They moved with the confidence of conquerors who had done this 1,000 times before. And why wouldn't they? The Vextharans had never lost a war. Their history was a tapestry of quick, brutal victories, species broken before they even understood they were fighting. But humanity had a different history. Vance leaned forward, his voice cutting through the chaos. "They expect us to break, to surrender or die trying to match them." He tapped the display, zooming in on Earth, on the blue-green marble that had survived ice ages, plagues, and its own self-destruction. "But we don't have to beat them today. We just have to outlast them." A murmur rippled through the room. Dr. Lian Zhao, the historian Vance had quietly summoned hours ago, stepped forward. Her voice was calm, deliberate. "The Dominion's entire strategy relies on shock and awe. They've never fought a prolonged siege. Not once." Vance nodded. "Then we dig in. We make them bleed for every inch." Outside, the first orbital strikes began to rain down on Earth's outer defenses. The sky burned, but beneath it, humanity prepared to do what it did best. The war room of the Olympus command station was a pressure cooker of sweat, fear, and flickering holoscreens. Admiral Elias Vance stood at the center of the storm, his knuckles white against the steel table as the United Planetary Council's arguments raged around him. The Vextharan ultimatum, 72 hours to surrender, blinked in crimson letters across every display. They've already gutted Mars' orbital grid. General Okafor slammed a fist down, his Martian accent sharp with fury. If we throw the fleet at them now, it's suicide. And if we don't, Earth burns, snapped Counselor Hale, her face gaunt under the emergency lighting. Their projections show total system collapse within days if we engage. We negotiate. A hologram of Sol's defenses flickered above the table, the Dominion's crystalline dreadnoughts hovering like vultures over Luna. Vance zoomed in on Earth's last functional orbital railgun clusters. "They're not here to negotiate," he said quietly. "They're here to break us, fast." A new voice cut through the noise. "Then we don't let them." Dr. Lian Zhao stepped forward, her fingers dancing across her datapad. A cascade of historical siege maps replaced the tactical display: Stalingrad's rubble, Leningrad's frozen streets, the 10-year standoff at Rokhiv. The Dominion's entire history is blitzkrieg: shock, awe, surrender. But this, she tapped an image of skeletal defenders grinning in a trench, this they've never faced: silence. Then Hale scoffed. "You're suggesting we let them bombard us? I'm suggesting we outlast them." Zhao's voice was steel. "Their ships are faster, their weapons deadlier, but they're not built for endurance. Their crews have biological stress limits. No prolonged campaigns in their records. None." Vance exhaled. Had seen the data. The Vextharan's flawless crystalline armor hit a critical flaw. Their metabolism crashed under sustained pressure. "They'll starve us out," muttered Okafor. "And well, make them choke on every bite," Vance said. He activated a tactical overlay. Earth's cities winking into subterranean redoubts. The last fleet dispersing into the asteroid belt. Full retreat. Guerrilla strikes. Sabotage their supply lines. Drag this out until they break first. The council erupted. "You're gambling with billions of lives," Hale shouted. "No," Vance said. "I'm refusing to lose them all at once." A vote was called. The holoscreen tallied the numbers in glacial increments. Outside, the first orbital strikes lit up Earth's atmosphere like a funeral pyre. 3 hours later, Vance stood at the observation deck, watching the Dominion's bombardment streak across the Pacific. Zhao joined him, her arms crossed against the station's artificial chill. "They'll come harder now," she murmured. "Let them." Vance didn't look away from the firestorm. "Every shot they waste on empty fortifications is one less for our real defenses." A proximity alert blared. The Dominion's lead destroyer, Judgment of Craxus, had entered low orbit. Its crystalline hull refracted the flames below into a grotesque kaleidoscope. Zhao's lips thinned. "They're watching us." "Good." Vance turned his back on the view. "Let them see we're still standing." As the station's shields flared under the first probing laser volleys, Earth's last orders went out. "Scatter, hide, survive." And beneath the bombardment, in the dark and the dust, humanity began to dig in. The Dominion's war drums had fallen silent. No more ultimatums crackled over Earth's airwaves. No more crystalline warships streaked across the sky in dazzling displays of firepower. Instead, Sol had become a graveyard of patience, humanities stretched thin but unbroken, and the Dominions, fraying at the edges like a blade dulled against stone. Admiral Elias Vance stood in the dim glow of the Lunar Redoubt's tactical holotank, the flickering blue light carving deep shadows into his face. Around him, the command center hummed with quiet efficiency, officers murmuring into headsets, drone feeds flickering across screens, the occasional tremor as distant orbital bombardments rattled the station's shields. Another supply convoy intercepted, Colonel Ikeda reported, her voice tight with satisfaction. She tapped a display, and a grainy feed zoomed in on the wreckage of a Vextharan transport drifting near Saturn's rings. That's the third this month. Their logistics are bleeding. Vance allowed himself a grim smile. Craxus won't admit it yet. Pride's a hell of a drug. Across the room, Dr. Lian Zhao leaned over a data slate, her fingers tracing lines of text only she could see. He doesn't have to admit it. His troops are doing it for him. She turned the slate toward Vance. Intercepted comms chatter. Their language doesn't have a word for stalemate. Closest translation is rotten victory. A dry chuckle escaped Vance. Let them rot. The first cracks had appeared sooner than anyone expected. The Dominion's high executor Craxus had assumed humanity would crumble under the weight of his blockade, that without interstellar trade, without open skies, without hope, Earth's leaders would grovel for terms. Instead, the planet had gone dark. Cities huddled under reinforced domes, their lights dimmed to avoid targeting. Factories buried deep in asteroid belts churned out munitions and makeshift drones. And from the shadows, Vance's raiders struck like ghosts. A Vextharan patrol ship, sleek and arrogant, drifted too close to the ruins of Phobos. Its crew never saw the swarm of mining charges disguised as debris until they detonated, shredding its hull. A supply depot on Titan's surface vanished in a fireball, its atmospheric processors sabotaged by infiltrators who melted back into the methane fog. Each strike was a pinprick. Together, they were a hemorrhage. Craxus' frustration had become a weapon, one Vance wielded with precision. "Play it again," Vance ordered. The comms officer hesitated. "Sir, it's graphic." A Vextharan voice, shrill with panic, screamed over the sound of tearing metal. "Fall back! Fall back!" They're in the static, then silence. Vance let it linger. "Broadcast that on all frequencies, every Dominion ship, every outpost. Let them hear their own fear." Zhao folded her arms. "Psychological warfare. You're banking on their biology. You're the one who told me they can't handle prolonged stress." Vance turned to the holotank, where the Dominion fleet's positions glowed like angry embers. Their tech's advanced, but their minds, they've never had to endure. Not like us. A memory surfaced, Stalingrad's frozen hellscape, a chapter in Zhao's histories, men eating glue to survive, women dragging corpses through snow, and yet they'd outlasted the invaders. We've done this before. Crax's flagship, the Ascendant Blade, orbited high above Earth, its crystalline spires gleaming in the sunlight. Inside, the High Executor paced his command chamber, his forearms clenched behind his back. Another uprising in the Jovian colonies, his adjutant reported, mandibles clicking nervously. "The laborers sabotaged the fusion reactors before we could," Craxus whirled, his carapace flushing crimson with rage. "Enough!" His voice echoed through the chamber. "These vermin should have broken months ago. What are they eating? What are they breathing?" No one answered. Its surface was scarred, its skies smogged with the residue of war, but its lights still flickered. And in the silence, Craxus felt something alien crawl beneath his exoskeleton. Tactical grind, guerrilla strikes and supply line sabotage bleed the Dominion. Psychological warfare. Humanity exploits Vextharan stress intolerance via intercepted comms and taunting broadcasts. Craxus' deterioration. His frustration mounts as human resistance outlasts his expectations. Historical parallels. Zhao's knowledge of sieges, Stalingrad informs strategy. Tension building. The Dominion's aura of invincibility cracks, setting up future rebellions. Transition hook. The next section will explore the galactic ripple effects of humanity's defiance as other oppressed species take notice. The Dominion's crystalline warships still hung in the void like jagged teeth, their weapon arrays glowing faintly in the dark, but the bite had gone out of them. Admiral Elias Vance stood in the dimly lit command hub of the lunar redoubt, his reflection warped in the curved observation glass. Below him, Earth hung like a battered jewel, its night side flickering with the pinprick fires of resistance. 2 years. 2 years of rationed air, of whispered transmissions, of watching Dominion patrols grow sluggish as their fuel reserves dwindled. "They're getting desperate," murmured Dr. Lian Zhao from the holotable behind him. Her fingers danced over the display, pulling up intercepted transmissions. "Craxus just ordered another purge of his own junior officers. That's the third this month." Vance didn't turn. He knew what he'd see in her face, the same quiet triumph that had settled over the redoubt like a second atmosphere. The kind that came when the hunter realized they were now the hunted. On the screen, Craxus' latest broadcast played, his forearm silhouette rigid with barely contained fury. "Your obstinacy changes nothing. The Dominion does not yield." The words were steel, but the cracks showed. The Vextharan's voice lacked its old resonance, the edges frayed by sleepless cycles. Zhao snorted. "Tell that to the rebellions in the Vextharan Belt." Vance finally turned, raising an eyebrow. "Confirmed?" She tapped a key. The holotable bloomed with reports, grainy footage of Dominion outposts aflame, intercepted distress calls in a dozen alien tongues. "Like you said, patience isn't passive." A grin tugged at Vance's lips, the first real one in months. The mining station, Talon's Claw, had been a Dominion stronghold for decades, its spiked docking rings bristling with inhibitor fields to keep the local Vextharan laborers docile, until the night the fields flickered. A Vextharan elder, her carapace scarred from 100 lashings, watched the light stutter. Then she did something unthinkable. She laughed. The sound spread through the tunnels like wildfire. By dawn, the station's overseers were barricaded in the command spire, screaming for reinforcements that never came. "Craxus knows," Vance said, pacing the holotable. "He's losing more than soul. He's losing the story." Zhao nodded. The Dominion's power was never just their fleet. It was the idea of them. Unstoppable. Inevitable. She pulled up an old Earth text on the screen. "The art of war. Sun Tzu had a word for this." "Momentum," Vance finished. He exhaled. "Then let's break it completely." Craxus took the bait. When the false transmission leaked, a faked order from Vance to abandon the redoubt, the Dominion fleet moved like starving wolves. Their dreadnoughts surged toward Luna, their formations tight, their guns primed for the killing blow. Vance watched them come from the redoubt's war room, his hands clasped behind his back. "Activate Stalingrad Protocol." The asteroids didn't look like weapons. That was the beauty of them. Just silent, pockmarked rocks drifting in the Lagrange points. Till the railguns hidden inside their cores woke up. The first volley tore through the Dominion's flank, shredding 3 cruisers before their shields could react. Craxus' flagship Ascendancy banked hard, straight into the second wave. Alarms shrieked across the redoubt as the Ascendancy's glittering hull cracked open like an egg, atmosphere venting in frozen plumes. Zhao gripped the console. "Did we?" Vance shook his head. "No." Hez still alive. On screen, Craxus' face appeared, his usually immaculate carapace streaked with coolant fluid. "You dare!" Vance leaned into the pickup. "We do, and so does the Vextharan Belt, and the Vrix colonies, and every other world you told was too weak to fight back." He paused. "Your High Council's watching this, aren't they?" The silence was answer enough. The hologram of Craxus' defeat played on loop in the cavernous chamber, the light glinting off the counselor's horrified, faceted eyes. Perhaps not all prey runs. Transition hook. With Craxus' reputation in ruins, the Dominion's internal fractures yawn wide, and an unexpected offer comes from the shadows. As Act 2, the Dominion flagship Eternity's Edge hung in the void like a fractured jewel, its once gleaming crystalline hull pitted with railgun scars and scorch marks from 100 skirmishes. Inside the command spire, High Executor Craxus paced the obsidian deck, his four-clawed hands flexing in erratic spasms. The air reeked of burnt ozone and something sharper, fear. "Another transmission from the lunar redoubt," hissed his comms officer, a Vextharan whose carapace had dulled from stress blue to sickly gray. "They're broadcasting it system-wide." Craxus whirled, his dorsal spines flaring. "Play it!" The hollow screen flickered to life, revealing Admiral Elias Vance in his battered IDF uniform, standing before a mural of ancient Earth, Stalingrad's ruins, Leningrad's icebound defenders. His voice was calm, relentless. "Day 487 of your 3-day conquest. Tell me, Executor, how many more cycles must your fleet endure? How many more crews will starve as your supply lines fray? The galaxy watches. They see you, stuck here, gnawing at our gates like a beast too proud to admit its jaws are broken." A chorus of static-laced human laughter followed, spliced from 1,000 broadcasts. Craxus' claws punched through the screen. "Enough!" His tactical officer cringed. "High Executor, the High Council demands an update. Our last assault failed, and the rebellions in the Zeta Quadrant are irrelevant," Craxus roared. But his reflection in the viewport betrayed him. The once glossy chitin now cracked, his primary eyes bloodshot from sleepless rotations. Dr. Zhao's psychological warfare was working. The Stalingrad Protocol, they called it, a siege not just of steel, but of will. Vance exhaled as the feed cut, rubbing the scar along his jaw. "Huz unraveling! Dr. Gore!" Zhao. Lian Zhao adjusted her glasses, the holographic siege maps casting shadows across her face. Historical precedent suggests a 72% chance hell lash out blindly now. The Vextharan stress response is like a rubber band. Stretch it too long and it snaps. A proximity alarm blared. Lieutenant Amirov swore. "Dominion fleet's moving. They're abandoning the blockade. All ships converging on Luna." Vance's grin was wolfish. Right into the kill zone. Craxus' armada descended like a glittering storm, their plasma lances carving through the void. But where they expected panic, they found silence. The lunar surface was pockmarked with abandoned bunkers, empty gun emplacements. The asteroids moved. Hidden railguns, buried deep in Luna's debris field, erupted in synchronized fury. Tungsten slugs the size of freight trains punched through the Eternity's Edge's shields, shearing off a quarter of its spine. Craxus was thrown against the command throne as klaxons wailed. "Ambush!" All ships, retreat to the hologram of Sub-Executor. Vela flickered onto the bridge, her voice icy. "By order of the High Council, you are relieved, Craxus. Your failures have cost us more than the system." Behind her, the council chambers burned with debate. Alien voices, Kathoron, V30, even the silent Nixandra, overlapped in outrage. "The humans outlasted us. The Zeta rebels are seizing shipyards." Craxus' mandibles trembled. "You dare?" Vela's image leaned closer. "I dare salvage what's left. Your shuttle departs in 90 cycles." "Try not to disgrace yourself further." Vance watched the Dominion fleet retreat in disarray, their formations scattered like broken glass. Velas playing smart. Shell negotiate. Zhao nodded. Sieges end one of two ways, starvation or surrender. She's choosing the latter. The stars burned cold and steady beyond the viewport. Somewhere out there, 100 oppressed species were stirring. Hearing the news, Sol stood firm. Vance keyed the fleet-wide channel. "All stations, this is Vance. Hold your positions." The next moves theirs. And for the first time in 487 days, the weight in his chest felt lighter than lead. The negotiation chamber aboard the Lunar Redoubt was a far cry from the Dominion's crystalline halls. The walls were bare metal, scuffed from years of siege, the air thick with the scent of recycled oxygen and human stubbornness. Admiral Elias Vance sat across from Sub-Executor Vela, her iridescent carapace dulled by stress, her four hands folded in a gesture that might have been deference or exhaustion. "You understand," Vela said, her voice a whisper of harmonics. "This is not surrender." "The Dominion does not surrender." Vance leaned back in his chair, the creak of his exoframe the only sound for a long moment. "No," he agreed, "but it is retreat." A flicker of something crossed Vela's compound eyes. Relief? Shame? Before she steadied herself. "Your persistence was unexpected. We miscalculated." That was the closest any Vextharan would ever come to admitting defeat. Outside the station's viewports, the remnants of the Dominion fleet hung in the void, their once gleaming ships scarred by railgun strikes and sabotage. The siege had lasted 507 days. 527 days of rationed food, of black market whispers in the lower decks, of children on Earth learning to sleep through orbital bombardments. 527 days of Craxus arrogance, unraveling like a frayed cable, until even his own officers turned against him. And now, here was Vela, offering terms. Vance tapped the table, calling up a holographic star map. "Your forces withdraw beyond the Centauri line. No reparations. We both know your High Council would never pay them. But you will release the occupied systems in the Kessari corridor." Vela's mandibles twitched. "Impossible." "The corridor is vital to your empire's pride," Vance cut in. "Tell me, Sub-Executor, how vital is it now?" He swiped a hand through the projection, pulling up a dozen flickering feeds, rebel broadcasts from a dozen worlds. A Vextharan mining colony tearing down Dominion banners. A V-30 flotilla defecting mid-battle. The galaxy had been watching, and what it had seen was a predator with broken teeth. Vela was silent. The last Dominion ship vanished into hyperspace, and Sol held its breath. Then the cheering started. It began in the Lunar Redoubt's mess halls, spread to the asteroid bunkers, erupted across Mars' dust-choked domes, and finally reached Earth, a wave of raw, disbelieving joy. In New Shanghai, where the power grids had been dark for months, people lit bonfires in the streets, feeding them with broken furniture and shredded Dominion propaganda. In the ruins of Stalingrad, that city, always that city, an old woman hugged her grandson tight and whispered, "We outlasted them." Vance stood on the Redoubt's observation deck, watching the celebrations flicker across the planet below. Dr. Lian Zhao joined him, her hair streaked with new gray, her tablet still buzzing with reports. "You're a hero," she said. Vance snorted. "Heroes charge in. We just waited. And that," Zhao said softly, "is why it worked." The Dominion's defeat at Sol sent shockwaves through the galaxy. On Vexthara, the High Council fractured. Craxus was executed for incompetence, his remains jettisoned into a black hole, a fitting end for a commander who had let humans humiliate him. Sub-Executor Vela, pragmatist to the last, survived the purges by blaming everything on her predecessor. And the Kessari corridor? It became a beacon. System after system rose up, emboldened by humanity's defiance. The Dominion's eternal empire found itself fighting fires on 100 fronts, its supply lines stretched thin, its enforcers outnumbered. As for Earth, they rebuilt. Not just the shattered orbitals or the bombarded cities, but something deeper. The siege had forged a quiet, unshakable certainty. They could endure anything. Years later, when the first Vextharan ambassadors arrived, trembling at the thought of facing the species that had broken the Dominion, they found humans polite, helpful even. One ambassador, brave enough to ask why, received a shrug from a grizzled dock worker. The human said, "We've got time." And somewhere, in a quiet room on Luna, Admiral Vance allowed himself a smile. The Dominion's retreat was not a single, dramatic withdrawal, but a slow unraveling. Ships vanishing from the outer system one by one, like embers cooling in the dark. On Earth, the silence was the strangest victory. No fanfare, no grand treaty, just the absence of orbital bombardment and the slow return of sunlight through unbroken glass. Vance retired to a quiet farm in New Zealand, where he spent his evenings watching the stars, waiting for an alert that never came. Zhao published her definitive work, The Siege Mentality: How Outlasting Wins Wars, though few outside military academies understood its true lesson that patience was the sharpest weapon humanity had ever forged. And when the next invaders came, because they always did, they found Seoul ready. Not with fleets or fury, but with something far worse. The calm, unblinking stare of a species that had learned to wait. The galaxy, at last, began to fear time itself.